Hello and good evening. You're watching AWANI Tonight with me, Farhana Sheikh. Malaysia will do its best to voice out its views on the Palestine-Israel war at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation APEC Economic Leaders Week in the United States next week. However, Prime Minister Dato' Sri Anwar Ibrahim said certain developments related to the crisis need to be discussed first.
Kita akan bincangkan beberapa teman dan kita akan jalankan tanggungjawab kita sebaik mungkin.
Anwar confirmed his attendance for the meeting on Tuesday, amid calls for Malaysia to boycott the summit due to the ongoing situation in Gaza. He said though Malaysia does not support United States' position on the conflict, it is still important to maintain diplomatic relations without compromising Malaysia's firm stance in support of the Palestinian people. This year's APEC conference will take place in San Francisco from November 11 to 17. The police will further enhance security controls at Malaysia's gateways in light of the Palestine-Israel war. Deputy Inspector General of Police Dato' Sri Ayub Khan Maidin Piche says the police are constantly carrying out intelligence and monitoring activities to protect any parties who may be targeted.
Kita sentiasa memantapkan, mengemaskan lagi pemantauan kita lah. Sama ada dari segi pintu-pintu masuk, dari segi intelijen yang kita peroleh daripada cawan khas, dari segi kita memperkasakan lagi kawalan-kawalan kita terhadap sasaran-sasaran penting. Ini termasuk juga sasaran-sasaran penting menyebabkan negara-negara asing yang ada di sini yang mungkin dijadikan sasaran oleh pihak-pihak yang tertentulah yang tidak berpuas hati dengan tindakan-tindakan yang berlaku di Palestin dan sebagainya.
Meanwhile, the Home Ministry said today it will lead the initiative for the government's single border agency, with a pilot project expected to start as early as next year. Its Minister, Dato' Sri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail, said that the matter has been agreed on by the Cabinet.
Sekarang kita ada 2 bulan untuk mempersiapkan semua. Soal struktur, organisasi, soal pejawatan dan soal untuk kita menyegerakan pilot project dulu. Kita ada 141 pintu masuk yang diwartakan di seluruh negara. Jadi sudah tentu kita kena mulakan dulu sejumlah pintu masuk yang akan kita umumkan sebagai pilot project.
According to Saifuddin, the single border agency would have 3 main objectives: to coordinate the functions of agencies that are currently stationed at the entry points, improve the existing delivery system, and to uphold integrity. He said he is confident that the Home Ministry can structure the Single Border Agency initiative by integrating 40 separate government agencies and their tasks. The ministry, he added, will use the Eastern Sabah Security Command and the Malaysian Maritime Enforcement Agency as inter-agency integration models. The European Union should recognise and appreciate the efforts of palm oil producing countries in meeting the EU Deforestation Free Regulation EUDR, says Dato' Sri Anwar Ibrahim. The Prime Minister adds that the EU should not dwell on the past and focus more on the efforts being made to improve the industry.
The government had taken very aggressive, responsible measures, and I think countries in Europe should show some appreciation and reciprocate by not necessarily supporting financially, but at least to give that recognition and therefore recognize the efforts by Malaysia and Indonesia and Thailand in this regard. And in their desire to continue with this reduction of carbon emission, etc., taking into consideration of the problems of the emerging economies.
Anwar also called for a fair and balanced implementation of the EUDR. Malaysian agro-commodity products, primarily palm oil, timber, cocoa and rubber exports, will be subject to the EUDR, which is expected to take effect in January 2025. The move has prompted concerns on its potential impact on farmers and producers, especially smallholders. But Anwar said Malaysia and Indonesia is working to establish an ad hoc joint task force to address these concerns. In other news, a total of 518 job scam syndicate victims have been rescued by the Foreign Ministry as of November 3rd. Deputy Foreign Minister Dato' Muhammad Alamin said the ministry is currently identifying 26 Malaysians in Myanmar also believed to be victims of job scam syndicates. He said the Foreign Ministry is working with the Malaysian Embassy in Yangon and cooperating with Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines and China to bring the victims home.
KLN ingin mengingatkan semua warga negara Malaysia supaya sentiasa peka dan berwaspada apabila menerima sebarang tawaran pekerjaan yang diterima menerusi platform media sosial yang meragukan.
Muhammad said he takes note of certain media reports claiming there are up to 2,000 victims out there. This, he said, suggests that they are potentially unregistered individuals that authorities have not detected. He urged relevant parties to come forward to help locate and subsequently bring victims home. We'll go for a quick break. Don't go anywhere. The COVID-19 pandemic has underscored the crucial role that care workers play in supporting families, communities and economies worldwide. However, here in Malaysia, the care economy remains an understudied area, leaving many essential workers in vulnerable positions. Anis Farid from the Women's Aid Organisation shed light on some of the challenges faced by this group and discusses potential strategies to strengthen the care economy.
The care economy has long been invisible because of how complex it is. The care economy is thought to run parallel to the economy that is normally thought of when we talk about the GDP and so forth. So this is because it can be viewed as subsidizing and supporting what we traditionally think of as the economy. Because care work encompasses both paid and unpaid work. A lot of the free labor that is provided because you have someone at home making sure that you have food to eat, that your house is clean, that your children are taken care of. This turns into time that people can spend on wage labor or paid work. And this unpaid work that's done at home, however, it's usually done by women and girls. So that said, there's a few key issues within the care economy that have gained traction. The first is the need for childcare services. Currently, one of the biggest barriers to women's employment is actually the lack of affordable and accessible childcare. And the second is what we're going to do to address our growing aging population and their care needs. Our demographics are shifting in that families are having less children, and we're seeing more households where there are older persons. We're also seeing households where there are children and older persons, sandwich households where people are taking care of the young and the old. But increasingly, we're seeing these care responsibilities of the elderly also shifting to women.
Anis commends the government in its effort to strengthen the care economy in Budget 2024. She underscores the importance of prioritising accessibility to assistance and fostering better engagement with care workers.
So overall, what we can see is that the government is slowly strengthening the care and support services to the communities who need them. I think what's most important now is to make sure that the spending of these fundings is transparent so that we can see exactly what investments are being made into the care economy. It's also important that the funding available is accessible for the communities they are targeting in terms of the cash assistance that they're offering and so forth. A lot of our care workers, they have a lot of experiences and stories that they have not told because the assumption that we make is that COVID is over, and because it's over, we don't need to evaluate what happened and how we can better respond to future crises. Ultimately, I think what the government actually needs to do is to begin engaging care workers in a meaningful way, especially in the formulation of policies moving forward, taking stock of lessons during COVID-19 and work together with all stakeholders to create a more resilient care workforce and infrastructure.
On to updates in Gaza. Israel's military is starting the next phase attack on Gaza, targeting Hamas's labyrinth of tunnels and command structures in northern Gaza. Scores of Palestinians were killed in overnight Israeli airstrikes in Beit Lahia as Israeli ground forces encircled Gaza. Meanwhile, numerous bodies were laid out at the entrance to Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City on Wednesday as bombardments continue. The Israeli army on Wednesday said it killed a senior Hamas weapons developer, Mohsen Abu Zina, in the Gaza Strip. There was no immediate comment by Hamas on Israel's claims. At least 10,328 Palestinians were killed in Israeli attacks on Gaza since October 7th.
Top diplomats from the G7 economies announced a unified stance on the Israel-Gaza war, condemning Hamas and supporting Israel's right to self-defense. However, the leaders called for humanitarian pauses to speed up delivery of aid to civilians in the Gaza Strip. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and foreign ministers from the UK, Canada, France, Germany, Japan and Italy emphasized that they support humanitarian pauses to facilitate urgently needed assistance, civilian movement and release of Israeli hostages.
Meanwhile, over in the US, the House of Representatives has voted to censure Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian American in Congress, over her comments on the Israel-Hamas war. The House voted 234 to 188 on Tuesday night to censure the three-term Democratic Congresswoman from Michigan.
She was accused of promoting false narratives about the Hamas attacks on Israel and calling for the destruction of Israel. She also enraged many fellow Democrats when she called out President Joe Biden of supporting the genocide of the Palestinian people. The punishment is one step below expulsion and follows a failed censure resolution last week. Tlaib, who has family in the West Bank, came under heavy criticism after she failed to immediately condemn Hamas after the October 7th attack. She, however, defended her stance, adding that her criticism of Israel has always been directed toward its government and its leadership under Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Most of the world's leading producers of fossil fuels have pledged to achieve net zero emissions by mid-century, a target that should align with the Paris Agreement's aims to keep global warming to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. However, the annual United Nations Environment Programme Production Gap reports that the top 20 producing countries are in fact heading the opposite direction.
The UN report found that production plans of governments including the US, China, Russia, Australia and COP28 host United Arab Emirates would produce 110% more fossil fuels in 2030 than would be consistent with limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, while 69% more than what would be consistent with 2 degrees Celsius. The report also found that planned increases in production in these countries would produce 460% more coal, 82% more gas, and 29% more oil than would be in line with the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit. Fossil fuels and the emissions they cause are expected to dominate discussions at COP28 in UAE from November 30th to December 12th.
More than 10 million Australians were cut off from internet and phone services after a nationwide outage hit Optus, the country's second biggest network operator. Services have been restored, but the outage that began just after 4 a.m. on Wednesday crippled payment systems, online operations and disrupted train services. Almost 40% of the Australian population are Optus customers and could not use smartphones, broadband, internet or landlines for much of the day. Optus CEO Kelly Bayer Rosmarin ruled out a cyber attack but also did not give a reason for the hours-long outage. The incident sparked criticism about the robustness of Australia's telecommunications network and in particular about Optus, which is owned by Singapore Telecommunications. The outage comes just more than a year after more than 9 million Optus customers had their personal data stolen during a cyber attack. That wraps up AWANI tonight. I'm Farhana Sheikh. Thank you for watching.